the Jesus film was developed. And we had heard rumors of it, and our director at the time had been back in the States and had heard this presentation made about this film on the life of Christ that we, through Crusade, with a film producer, had helped produce, and it was a 2-hour version from the Gospel of Luke, done such that we could have the rights to that film and use it to share the gospel. We said, we want it, we have to have it. Send us a copy so we can start translating and simplifying the dialect and doing the translations with. So in Asia, we had the privilege of being the first team that actually began using that, such that as it was being finished in final edit in the States, they had 2 guys carry out these black cases of 16mm reels. And it was at that time known as a 4th generation black and white copy. It was so bad and so grainy that later, as we saw the finished version, we actually saw and understood some scenes that we didn't even know were in the film. The angel speaking to Mary didn't show up in our version that we were working with. We just heard this voice. Is there an angel in there somewhere? We didn't know that. There were 8 or 9 of us, and none of us have ever been involved with screen editing, screenwriting before, but we sat down and simplified that script hour after hour after hour, sit around the table doing this. We finished this script, and in the other room, our secretaries were typing on typewriters, the new script in little paragraphs where you had whiteout and typing the new script as it went down. And then we had guys down in the basement with a 16mm projector and stopwatches timing the new paragraphs and sentences and writing the new time codes in beside this script. But that version of the film did not have an evangelistic closing. And so we wrote out a 3-minute evangelistic closing to the Jesus film.
He rose from the dead. He is alive. He wants to come into your life.
It was done on that little table in Baguio with a bunch of us who had never done script writing before, but we knew how to present Christ. And that was our finished version that we then sent out around the region to have translated and began the first translation process. I don't think the media people today would do it that same way. We all went down by van to Baguio, from Manila to Baguio to Manila, and flew out across the region, taking these scripts to our countries, 22 different languages, began translation process. As we began to see the Jesus film used across Asia, we began to see showings of 200, 300, 2,000 people watching it with a little screen put up and the 16mm projectors. And as a result, in that first year, in villages across Asia, well over 1 million people saw that film. Thousands came to Christ. And that began to accelerate year after year after year across there. I had the privilege of carrying some of those translations into the countries. One, it was the country of Bangladesh. It's a Muslim country, but at that point there were a few Christian churches. And I had the privilege of being there the first night it was to be shown. It was a large room, it was tin roof, rough brick, wooden shutters for windows. I think it was a dirt floor, but I don't remember. It was overflowed with people. You couldn't see the floor. Just crammed in there, and I ended up standing outside and looking through the window because there wasn't room to get in. And they were all seated on the floor or standing around or peering in the windows. Kind of fought my way up to look in. And I said, who are all these people? And they said, well, it was from the neighborhood. They knew there was going to be a film show in Bengali. We don't know who all these people are. They're not church members. Some are. Well, the film started in Bengali. And I watched and listened and heard people for the first time seeing the film in their own language, much less on the life of Christ. And watched there for 2 hours as they emoted in the film and heard the story and responded, and there were times where it was totally silent, and times where you could hear a lot of talk about what was going on, and then get down to the last closing and seeing Jesus crucified, and then the close, and then one of the staff members got up and spoke again at the end of that closing and asked people that had prayed to receive Christ if they would indicate so by raising, there wasn't room to stand, you couldn't, to raise their hand. And the mother of our staff director was Stephen Sakar, with tears in her eyes, even though she'd been in a church, she said, Jesus speaks my language. Jesus speaks my language. Watching that happen brought the reality that Jesus doesn't speak English only, doesn't speak Hebrew only, but he can speak every language of the world, and people want to hear in their heart language. That was the miracle of those translations in that Jesus film, and later used all across the world. And it was a very special privilege to be there that night. And we began then seeing the Jesus film become part of what later became the greatest evangelistic tool used by not only Campus Crusade, but every mission agency in the world. But it began with that grainy black and white copy and sitting around the table saying, what'd they say, and who said that, and how can we simplify that? And that package later became the script that was used for translation scripts all around the world. Very, very important milestone, not only in our own lives, in my life to look back at, but for the ministry to look back at and say, how did the Jesus film get started? How did it work? Well, that's part of the story. And the others around the table could tell you different parts of it. But when you look at significant moments in the life of this ministry, those days sitting at that table doing that script, I think needs to be one of those that we look back and say, God, thank you for what you did there.